Yeah.
What's happening this time? What are we?
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Surely not everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody?
Everybody.
Okay. Everybody's starting the show.
The year is 1974, and yes, the song Kung Fu Fighting came out in 1974.
Great song. I mean, like I said, surely not everybody was, but you know,
I think they were.
He must have taken a scientific poll.
He had to have.
Maybe it had something to do with the census collection in 1973, and then they found out everybody was indeed Kung Fu Fighting.
They were.
And everybody was also collecting a lot of records.
Yes.
In 1974. The Beatles were gone. The individual dudes were putting records out. I think Ringo put one out in 74.
Ringo put one out.
And John put one out in 74. It was Walls and Bridges. Or Bridges and Walls. Yes. But of which I have neither. And it's interesting. Every other year, I think we've done 3 of these shows, I've had a bunch of those records.
Yeah.
I don't have that many records from 1974. And it surprised me, the ones I didn't have. So I guess that running inventory in my head is getting less and less accurate as we go.
Well, I think it's because 74 was kind of a weird year. It was a year that rock kind of took the back seat for the first time in a bit, and pop took over.
Yeah, or singer-songwriter type stuff.
Yeah.
Seemed to really take over.
And funk and disco was starting to make its way.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things happening in the music. You know, maybe the rock artists were just kind of getting tired. You know, acid was going out of acid and pop were not becoming a thing.
Maybe they were too high to give a damn.
And cocaine was taking off. So everybody's in this fast mode.
You'd think that would speed up the recording process.
Yes.
There are some bands, I will talk about one of them, that put 2 records out in 1974.
There were quite a few.
This was still at a time when not only did you have that safety net as an artist, but you also had that urgency to keep putting new material out.
Yeah, the record companies were really like, come on, we got to put something out.
Which is crazy to think that bands take years to do albums anymore. But in the middle 70s, I mean, they were really striving to get as much recorded music out as they could.
Yeah, and the number 1 album, it's kind of hard to find what the number 1 album of 74. It's weird in doing this, but I think the number 1 album was John Denver, Back Home Again.
That makes sense.
And then Olivia Newton-John, If You Know Me, Let Me Know.
Okay. If You Love Me, Let Me Know.
If You Love Me, Let Me Know. And then good old Elton John with Caribou.
Which I do not. I have a bunch of Elton, but I have never gotten Caribou. I searched through my Elton John stuff like 3 times yesterday.
You were certain you had Caribou.
I was certain I did, yeah. No Dice, no Caribou. So I'm not going to be talking about Olivia. I'm not going to be talking about John Denver or Elton John. Or Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Who also had an album out in 74.
It was just, I mean, for lack of a better term, kind of a transitional year, I guess. And listen to the bands that broke up in 74. Now, they reformed, but the Moody Blues, the Stooges, King Crimson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are some pretty big hitters.
Yeah.
That said, we're done.
Interesting. I wonder if it had to do with the drugs.
It could be. Listen to the bands that formed. This is when my music is starting to really birth.
Okay.
Blondie, The Dictators, Patti Smith Group, Pure Hell, Rocket from the Tombs, Ramones, Stranglers, Talking Heads, and the 101ers.
Crazy.
And you know why the 101ers are important?
Why?
Joe Strummer's band before he started
the Clash.
Or joined the Clash.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy to think about that. But when you do think about what happens the rest of the decade, there had to be like just a huge collision of pop and art rock happening in like 74, 75. Obviously that was the time. Yeah, that's really interesting. I have a couple of Ramones records, but I don't have their first one. And I've done a decent job of getting the Talking Heads stuff, but actually their first record came out in 77.
Yeah.
So they were together at RISD, right?
Yeah.
The Rhode Island School of Design,
right,
for like 2.5 years.
And that's
or
when
so.
they just formed. But the Ramones and Blondie both played their first shows at CBGB's in 74.
In 1974. What a time to be alive that would have been.
There was a lot going on in 74.
I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion. What's your first record that you want to talk about?
Well, let's start with Supertramp, Crime of the Century. This was the third studio album for Supertramp, and the hit single off this was Dreamer.
So this came out toward the end of the year, in October of 74. And, you know, Supertramp is an interesting band because I always kind of put them in that sort of progressive pop area. They're not really a rock band. They're not really a pop band. They've always felt like
progressive,
more progressive. There's more musically going on than there is with most rock music that you hear on the radio. And they're still all over the radio.
Yeah, and this was really their first two albums were, I don't want to say failures, but they did not do well.
Yeah.
And this was the first album they had that really kind of vaulted them into the public eye.
Yeah. I've always been a huge fan of Supertramp. I did a project a long time ago at IU, and they had a big concert, I think in like the early 80s.
Oh, really?
When Supertramp was like huge.
Yeah.
And it was for the union board put these concerts on. And we were doing like a 100th anniversary project for it. And the most infamous concert they ever put on was Supertramp.
Really?
They were huge, but nobody came to the show. They didn't sell any tickets to it. It was interesting. So, did you ever see Supertramp?
No. And I mean, they're a band that I've kind of always liked a couple of songs, but I was never a massive fan.
Yeah. Yeah. This is A&M Records. Yours is in I love the shot of them on the back.
Yeah. Just kind of
sitting there.
stargazing.
Yeah, holding their suits and their hats in their hands.
They're dreamers.
Yeah, absolutely. Bloody Well Right is one of the songs on here that I would always hear.
Yeah.
Before I even knew it was them. But yeah, this kind of started them. They became more popular through the 70s for sure. Probably most popular with Breakfast in America.
Yeah. That was one that when I was going through, I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This came out in 74.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like they are that old to me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're kind of frozen in time in the late 70s in my mind.
And I think it was because maybe a lot of that stuff in the early 80s was still all over the radio. Dreamer and Bloody Well Right are staples on classic rock radio.
Yeah, for sure. And they have a few more.
That
still are too. Well, that's a good one, man. I'm going to take the Vinyl Ventures record down.
And next up for you,
my first one, and I brought two of them. I have Kiss's first record, self-titled record, which is packed with songs that they played through their entire career. I just noticed this morning.
It was owned by
Tim somebody, and it's funny, as long as I've had this, I didn't know
You
that
didn't know.
until this morning when I was going through these and I looked at it. I was like, does that say Tim on Ace's
Yeah, and
chin?
why did you decide to put it on Ace's chin?
I have no idea. But, you know, this is infamous for a few reasons. Peter had someone else do his makeup for the cover, and his makeup never before nor ever again looked like that. But yeah, this is Kiss's first record, man. I mean, it's history making. This is one of the repops they did in 2014 on 180 gram vinyl. But I just love the way it looks. You've got the
and I love the
yeah, and it's basically identical to the original.
Yeah, the repop is.
But yeah, this record has always been just an amazing one when you think about it. It's got Strutter, Nothing to Lose, Firehouse, Cold Gin, Let Me Know, Kissin' Time, Deuce, Love Theme from Kiss, which is an interesting one. It's an instrumental. 100,000 Years and Black Diamond. So like 4 or 5 of those songs are songs that Kiss
legendary
has played in their set since then. And it's just a great record. It's interesting where we were talking about the Ramones were beginning, Blondie was beginning, Talking Heads were beginning. These guys were from New York too, but they're just headlong into the glam thing.
Yeah.
So there in New York, there was just a collision of different stuff going on, and I think it would have been a fascinating time to be seeing live music in New York.
Yeah, I think that maybe that was the thing with 74, because the 74 was a big year for tours. I mean, there were some bands that were touring so much, they just didn't have time to put out an album.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've always loved this record. It's one of the ones I still listen to when I go back. A lot of times with bands like Kiss that have such huge catalogs, I'll listen to a greatest hits. So like the first greatest hits from them that I ever had was double platinum. And I threw a fit at Karma Records in Greenwood to make my parents buy me that on cassette when I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Had to have it.
Yeah. But it is fun to just put the record on as is and give it a listen. And it looks like the total length on this is 35 minutes and 7 seconds. So about 17 minutes aside. Quick 3-minute songs.
And Kiss was one of those bands that the punk crowd really liked too. I mean, they didn't say, we're not Kiss fans. They were somebody that the punk crowd identified with.
Because they were scary.
Yeah, they were scary. They were different.
Scary and different. And, I mean, we take it for granted now, but they scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. Before I really listened to the music, my cousins were into them, and I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? But
this is one that I had an original also.
Did you?
And it's one I'd had for years that I probably bought used somewhere.
Yeah. It's a good one, though. And
that is a great one.
This hype sticker on the 2014 pressing is square, so that is approved. What's your next one?
Next on the hit parade. Well, this is not a hit. Nobody's going to know this. No, it's not the Beatles. Meet the Residents. The Residents released their very first album.
That's awesome.
North Louisiana's phenomenal pop combo.
I saw this recently, and I didn't study it, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, somebody drew on the cover for the Beatles record. That's really cool. I love the picture of them on the back.
Yeah.
Too.
And the Residents were always known. I mean, they had not yet perfected the eyeball heads and the tuxedos, but nobody ever knew who they were. It was kind of one of their things.
Kind of like Kiss.
Yeah. They were exactly like Kiss.
Yeah.
I mean,
nobody saw them without their makeup.
We don't want anybody to know who we are.
That's interesting.
And they were from the Bay Area. I mean, even though it says they were from Louisiana, but the Bay Area is where they resided.
Yeah. Well, they were residents of the Bay Area.
Yes, and so a lot of these are they were big on doing bizarre covers, like Boots.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure is a cover.
I love their names: Paul McCrawfish, John Crawfish, George Crawfish, and Ringo Starfish.
There may have been a lawsuit with this.
You think there were any drugs
Oh,
involved?
yeah. And you've read about them in Time, Newsweek, and the New York Times.
Here's the big beat sound of that fantastic, phenomenal foursome, Residents Unincorporated. That's great. I've always loved that cover, man. It's so funny. And it does seem like you could get into some serious trouble because not only is that the picture
Of Meet the Beatles.
of, with the Beatles or Meet the Beatles, but the colors are basically the
Yeah.
same, and that's funny. Love it. Do you have any of their other stuff? The Residents?
yeah.
All of it?
Not all of it. They've put out
A lot.
a lot of albums.
Yeah. That's a good one. I still don't have that Beatles record.
Oh, Meet the Beatles. Yeah, I don't have that one. I've got the Canadian copy.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that's a good one, man.
Yeah, it's an unusual one to think that, hey, but I mean, what a perfect year for that to come out.
Yeah.
You've got Barbra Streisand with the #1 song, so why not? That's a great year for the Residents to start.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. All right, my next one is Aerosmith's second record, Get Your Wings. This was recorded December 17th, 1973 through January 14th, 1974, so a little over a month, and it came out in March of 1974. And there were three...
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, and there were 3 songs released as singles from this, Same Old Song and Dance, Train Kept A-Rollin', and SOS Too Bad. None of these songs were hits, which is really interesting. But the
Because Train Kept a Rollin' is one they do live a bunch.
Yeah, they do live, and Zeppelin did it. I mean, it's a cover. Same Old Song and Dance, released as a single, not a hit. Lord of the Thighs, which is a great song. Spaced, Woman of the World. Seasons of Wither is on here, which is a fantastic song, and that wasn't released as a single. So it's kind of weird, that first album came out, and they kind of made a huge splash, and then their second record comes out, and it's, it's not really welcomed by the listening public. Critically, I think the reviews were positive, but yeah, it's just, and most of the time when I think of Aerosmith, I think of this as their first record, but it's their second one. So yeah.
Some young-looking dudes.
Young-looking dudes that have been doing it for 50 years. Yeah. Jack Douglas produced this, and I think he produced the next 3 records that they made. But yeah, Get Your Wings by Aerosmith. And, they were doing that farewell, that Peace Out tour, and Steven had some kind of vocal cord injury, and they shit-canned it. It's supposed to start up later in 2024, so we'll
now,
see.
did they have the Wing logo on the first album?
I think it was a derivative of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't remember. Actually, I think it just said Aerosmith. I think this may be the debut of that.
Yeah, so that's
But that-
when they got their wings.
But there you go. And that winged logo kind of has made it's grown and changed throughout the years too. So my wife and I saw them in 2020 at their residency in Vegas right before COVID, and it was great. They were fantastic. So if you do get a chance to go see them, do it, because if there's a band that's doing a farewell tour that I believe is going to go away,
it's them.
it's Aerosmith.
Yeah.
So what's next on your hit parade?
Well, let's keep it a little weird. Alice Cooper's greatest hits, and I know we kind of stay away from greatest hits as release years, but for me, this album meant a lot because my cousin, who was like a big brother to me, he had this poster up, and I love this poster.
I do too. I love the old time
Rip off. There's
Groucho,
who, did you know,
was friends with Alice, right?
he was Alice's neighbor.
Yeah, they lived next to each other in
And-
Beverly Hills.
Yeah, and Groucho had insomnia, so he'd call Alice to come over, and Alice would go over and they'd drink Budweiser.
Such a strange story. What
Yeah,
an
it
interesting
is.
life Alice has had. But I've always loved this old like
Yeah.
gang time,
Gangsta
gangland.
look.
Yeah, it's very
And
cool.
I mean, it's full of hits.
Easter eggs. You got 18, Is It My Body, Desperado, Under My Wheels, Be My Lover, School's Out, Hello Hooray, Elected, No More Mr. Nice Guy, $1 Billion Babies, Teenage Lament, and Muscle of Love. I do not have this.
It's a great one to get.
Yeah.
There's Bogey.
So cool. And,
Put that up. Does it show the full picture?
it's not a gatefold, unfortunately.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I don't even know what's on the inside. Let's see. Oh, that's fun.
Ah. Cool. Like another piece of art.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
I love the line art.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Let's see. Alice Cooper's Greatest Hits. Of course, produced by Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, Bob Ezrin.
Yeah. Who also...
Bob was a prolific producer
Oh, he
in
was.
the 70s.
I mean, he did Kiss's biggest album,
Yeah.
Destroyer. I mean, he was all over the place. That's a good one, man.
And I think this was one that I had all these songs, but I had to have this one just because it meant so much to me personally.
Yeah, as a kid, what you're introduced to it sticks,
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you're a completist or, you want to get his individual records, which I'd say those first 4 or 5 Alice Cooper Band records are untouchably
Well, because that's with the classic lineup.
the classic lineup, and it was more a band and not like a guy.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper's band is now a guy. Do you know who gave Alice Cooper their big break?
Oh, I've heard this before.
Frank Zappa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you told me that. That's right.
Yeah. Apparently they went over, played for him, and he's like, I don't know what I just saw, but I think it's pretty good. And that he's the reason they got their first record deal with
Yeah.
Warner Brothers. So,
And throughout the 70s, Alice Cooper was a legendary star.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was another one, he was doing like the shock rock thing, kind of like Kiss. Kiss just took it and pushed it to
Another
level. But yeah, he was definitely a groundbreaking dude.
Yeah, but I mean, to think his first greatest hits album came out in 74.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty crazy. All
What you got?
I've got a good one. It's I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight. It's Richard and Linda Thompson, and this is a infamous record as well.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how to describe this. We were talking before we started. It's kind of folky, kind of Americana with some like Irish traditional, and then there's like some synthesizer stuff too. But the title song, I Want to See the Bright Lights Tonight, is fantastic. This was released in April of 74. I think for the first like 8 or 10 years, this was only released in the UK.
Yeah.
And then in 1983, it was released elsewhere. But initially, this was ignored by reviewers. But in the time since, it's come to be very highly regarded. His wife's voice is great. His voice is great. His guitar playing is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that in the best guitar players list, he always appears.
Yeah, he always pops up. And the cover is simply, it looks like a mirror that's steamed up and they wrote on it with their finger. But yeah, it's really good. And if you want to listen to something, that is just off kilter a little bit, but sounds really fresh and cool, especially if you're into the Americana
Yeah.
type stuff, the Jayhawks, the Wilcos, the,
Any
all
of that stuff.
Yeah, I think you'd really like it. So give it a chance.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, our good old buddy that you didn't have, I came through. Elton John, Caribou. And this was a big selling album in 74, but his biggest seller in 74, Elton John's greatest hits.
Again, with the
greatest hits.
greatest hits 4 years after you,
Yeah.
really 4 years after you start.
Yeah.
What's on here? Can I flip this around?
Yeah.
The bitch is back. Okay.
Yeah, this is really his first album that really gained a lot of traction.
Well, you've got the bitch is back, Pinky, Grimsby, Dixie Lily, Solar Prestige, a Gammon, You're So Static. I've seen the Saucers, Stinker, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, and Ticking. And really, there's just 2 songs on here that are hits.
Well-known
Yeah.
Elton John songs.
That's, there's he and Bernie
He and Bernie just sitting there, ready for the picture.
ready to collect more money. Yeah, this is one that I just never. I could have sworn that I had it. Again, I went through my Elton John stuff like 4 times, and I've got stuff I need to do some rearranging because new stuff hasn't gotten filed, and there's shit everywhere. And from an alphabet standpoint, my record collection right now is not great.
And this was his 8th studio album. 8th.
That's crazy.
Considering the first one came out in 70?
Yeah. Or 69.
69, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Like
70,
Empty Sky?
Yeah, 70 was the live album
Yeah.
that really catapulted him.
8 records before
Yeah.
that. Holy moly. I wouldn't have guessed that. Huh. But you got to love his fashion sense, right? I wonder if that's caribou skin. It looks like tiger, actually.
Caribou tiger. It's an animal. And they're dead.
That's a good one. I have almost all of his stuff.
And this album was recorded quickly. Which, I mean, for somebody of Elton John's stature at the time, to think that he started recording in January and released it in June, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, and he was probably touring at the same time,
Yeah.
too. And just recording whenever they got breaks. I mean, that's the way they did it. That's the way Kiss did it. That's the way, obviously, Elton did it. All of these bands, the clock was ticking in between times that they released albums and released the next one. And in any dead time in between, they toured. They were machines. It's pretty crazy.
And it wasn't incredibly critically received. I think, I said earlier that this is not when he took off. He had already taken off.
Yeah.
But this is at a period when he could release something and it's going to do well.
Yeah. And then just sustaining that has got to be hard as a musician, as a writer, whether you're writing the music or the lyrics. I mean, both of those dudes work together. But yeah, to keep that pace up and at the same time maintain the quality, or knowing that every time you release a record, you have to have a hit.
Yeah, you got to have a hit.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good one to have in your collection. It's not one you're going to put on all the time, but it's a good one to have in your collection.
I will take that under advisement and grab it the next time I get a chance. Okay, my next one. We talked about Randy Newman in the last show.
Oh.
Well, this is Good Old Boys. This is Randy's 4th studio album, released in September of 1974 on Reprise Records. And this is really his first album to be critically acclaimed. This was initially envisioned as a concept album about a character named Johnny Cutler, an everyman in the Deep South. So the singles on this, Rednecks is the first song. That was one of the singles. Louisiana 1927 and Every Man a King were the three. And there have been reissues of this album and, more songs released and stuff. But, Randy Newman is, as we've talked about before, is kind of, now he's a composer, but he started as a pop dude,
Yeah.
a songwriter.
Yeah.
And it's just such a weird career arc for a guy to make the journey that he has. So, and again, on the back, you've got the lyrics to all the songs, which the first time that happened was Sgt. Pepper.
Nice.
If you listen to my short, it's not necessarily always uplifting
Yeah.
music, but he's taking on some social issues, in this album especially.
And
So.
74 was definitely a banner year for singer-songwriters.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the whole decade
Oh,
more
yeah.
and more singer-songwriters, more and more guys that you heard a song from and then maybe never heard another hit
Yeah,
from.
the one-hit wonders.
Yeah. Yeah, it really seemed like it's that picked up steam in the middle 70s. So, good old boys, Randy Newman. I can't even remember where or when I got this.
That's a nice one. Well, 74, there were some rock and roll releases, and
I bet I know which one this is,
notably, It's Only Rock and Roll by
Yeah.
the Rolling Stones.
which I do not have.
And was a studio album by the Rolling Stones released in October of 74 on Rolling Stones Records.
Their own imprint, huh?
And it was the last Stones album to feature guitarist Mick Taylor.
Mm-hmm. So this is pre-Ronnie Wood,
Pre-Ronnie Wood.
Rolling Stones. What
Yeah.
were the hits off this? Obviously, It's Only Rock and Roll.
Yeah, It's Only Rock and Roll. And Ain't Too Proud to Beg.
Good old Motown hit.
Yes.
I love the cover because it's like almost like a classic painting with the band in the middle of all of these. I can only assume they're virgins surrounding.
Yeah, maybe
band.
this is the 100 Virgins.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Could be. Was there any other big tunes off this? What?
Let
Let me look at the. Well, they're not on the back.
Here.
Thanks,
let's go to
Rolling
the
Stone.
track.
Z-
Oh, if you can't rock me, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, It's Only Rock and Roll, The Next Goodbye, Time Waits for No One, Luxury, Dance Little Sister.
Okay.
If you really want to be my friend, Short and
I don't know what that last one is.
Fingerprint File. Not a bunch of well-known songs.
No. Interesting. Well, this would have been.
Well, the Stones were touring like mad during this period. And I mean, this was, sandwiched in between No Stone Unturned and Made in the Shade. So it's not it's after their high creative period. So it was kind of I think, it was a point when the Stones are making all their money touring because the legendary tours were 74 and 75.
Really?
Oh, yeah, for the Stones.
Would have been an interesting time to be around. I'm going to pull this out of here and take a look at the inner sleeve because I'm just curious. Oh,
That's a nice inner sleeve, too.
yeah, it is.
Oh, and this is when Billy was touring with them,
Billy
playing
Preston.
keyboards.
Oh, look at that. That's kind of cool. Just kind of your playbill for the record. Cast in order of appearance. Billy Preston, Nicky Hopkins, Ian Stewart, Ray Cooper. Man, they had a good cast of supporting characters, didn't they?
And it did make it to the U.S. Billboard 200 #1 chart.
No kidding. I would not have guessed that.
I would not have guessed that either. It was, in the U.S., it's platinum.
Nice.
But I mean, again, I think it's because they were so well known. It's back to the Elton John thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you could put out an album and it's going to sell 1 million copies.
Just the name recognition.
Yeah, the name recognition alone.
The overwhelming, like, all-encompassing thing that these artists became.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
even know where this ranks on Stone's albums. I doubt. I would be highly surprised if it's even in the top 10.
I do love the cover.
Yeah, I've always liked the cover.
It's very cool.
The title track for this was recorded separately from the rest of the album. The basic rhythm track had to be laid down by members of the Faces.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh. Interesting.
including Ron Wood.
Ron Wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's probably when they decided, hey, you're going to be our next guitarist.
Yeah. That's cool. Huh. Well, the Stones have no shortage of catalog, that's for sure. I don't have that many Stones records. I think I've maybe got 4.
Really?
Yeah. I've been tempted by that multicolored mono box set.
I really want to get it. It goes on a brief, like, 12-hour sale.
Yeah.
And I always miss it.
But it's still probably 300 bones.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess listening to some of the, like, Beggar's Banquet and some of the other ones that you know so well in mono is a different experience.
Oh, yeah, just like the Beatles
Yeah.
stuff that was in mono, for sure. That's a good one, man. Well, my next one is Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower, guitarist from Procol Harum. This was produced by his Procol Harum bandmate, Matthew Fisher. Trower explained the album by saying that he had the first line of the song Bridge of Sighs for years, and one day saw some sport pages which listed a racehorse called Bridge of Sighs, which he thought would be a great title. This is Robin Trower's second album, and if you know anything about, like, guitarists, this is an album that guitarists love. And many people have remade the song Bridge of Sighs and different songs from this. Two Rolling Stoned is one of the songs on here, funny enough. It's been...
Nice segue.
Yeah, has been covered by Drivin' and Cryin' with Warren Haynes for 1995 compilation. UFO included the song on their covers album, the Salentino Cuts. Day of the Eagle has been covered by Steve Stevens from Billy Idol's band. I mean, Robin Trower is a very well-known, well-respected guitarist. And you can almost find this record anytime you go to a record show. Somebody will.
Oh, yeah.
have
And
it
it's
for
not
sale.
expensive.
No, it's not bad at all. But it's a good one to listen to, and it makes me think, oh, I should go back and listen to more Procol Harum too. So, yeah. I've always loved the cover too. It's kind of
one of
trippy.
those covers that when you see it, you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. This came out in April of 74, and it looks like it was recorded in late 73 to 1974. Robin Trower on guitar, James Dewar on bass, and Reg Isadora on drums. And Jeff Emmerich from Sound Engineering Beatles Records, he's the sound engineer on this too. So, just a little background information.
On Robin Trower.
All right, what's your...
Next. You ready to get spicy?
I think so. I
Well,
think I'm already pretty
I don't know if
spicy.
it's spicy, but the cover's spicy.
We'll have to cover them up.
That's okay.
Yeah. These ladies look like they're, just walking through the jungle with not much on, and they're surprised by a camera flash.
Roxy Music country life.
Yeah.
And this is the fourth studio album by, they're called Art Rock Band.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'd call Roxy Music an art rock band.
They're certainly not the Velvet Underground.
No, they're more, I don't know. Where
Kind
would
of
you,
gothy? Goth?
I don't even know if I'd call them gothic. They're almost like a new version of, I've always thought of them as a new version of Yes.
Sort of. Definitely.
It's,
He's definitely the driving force behind.
yeah, it's definitely Brian Ferry.
Brian
is
Ferry.
the driving force behind
Yeah.
Roxy Music. But yeah, this is the cover raised quite a bit of a stink.
I bet. It's probably not the best wording to use, but
Yeah.
yes.
The thrill of it all. 3 and 9. All I want is you. Out of the blue. If it takes all night. And then on side 2, it gets harder to read. I'm trying to see if there's
Bittersweet.
a really good time. Casanova. I don't know that any of these are well-known songs. I mean, the single from this was All I Want Is You and The Thrill of It All were the two singles. Casanova was singled out for praise by a number of critics as more cynical and hard rocking number than the usual Roxy Music.
That's cool. I'd rather look at the front cover.
Yeah, the front cover is fun.
Even if it gets us in trouble.
It's not going to get us in trouble.
Nah. I mean, everybody's covered up there. But this is one of those infamous album covers. So.
Yeah, it was. The cover art was shot by Eric Borman, and the Country Life cover features two scantily clad models. And they were, one was a girlfriend, and Michael Ferry met them in Portugal and persuaded them to do the photo as well as help with the words of the song Bittersweet.
Okay. I'm sure they got points on the sales of the record.
And as we talked, it was controversy in some countries, including the United States and Spain, where it was censored for release. As a result, early releases in the U.S. were packaged in opaque shrink wrap to cover them up.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, you wouldn't want to upset anybody with the nude female figure.
In Australia, it was banned in some stores.
Interesting.
We're banning it. I'm sure in the early days, Walmart said no way.
That's a good one. I've never gotten into Roxy Music, but you hear about Brian Ferry all over the place.
Yeah, and this is one I didn't originally have, but I had to pick up at a show just because of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Roxy Music Avalon, but I had to get this one just because of the cover.
Yeah. Like I said, it's one of the infamous ones. I mean,
yeah, it's a well-known one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, my next one is Mr. Bowie, Diamond Dogs. This is after the Spiders from Mars broke up. This is the album that David did. He played all the lead guitar on the record in absence of Mick Ronson. This featured the return of Tony Visconti, who hadn't worked with Bowie for 4 years, and the two would collaborate for the rest of the 70s. Musically, it was Bowie's final album in the glam rock genre, though some songs were influenced by funk and soul music too, which Bowie embraced on his next album, Young Americans, which is a really good record too. So this came out in May of 1974. The big songs from this are Rebel Rebel, Diamond Dogs, and 1984. So,
and that's kind of the epitome of what was going on with music, even with the releases we've talked about.
right.
I mean, he's playing into these new influences that are making their way into the music world.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, he was kind of in the crux of his career. I mean, he never stopped changing and doing whatever the hell he wanted to for the rest of his career. Now, this cover is also infamous. Well, a version of this cover is also infamous because it actually it's a gatefold, but the infamous one has him as this like dog character, but it had some
more detailed genitalia.
More detailed genitalia, yes, which would be a great band name. So
I've always loved the cover art on that, and it's unusual. But
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the cover art we've talked about for this year of release, I mean, even the Rolling Stones, it's very out of character for what these bands were putting out.
yeah, you know, that's a good point. We should do another strictly not packaging but cover art.
Yeah.
And really dig into some of the ideas behind it. There is a new doc out there called Squaring the Circle.
It's good.
And I've heard it's really good, and it's most of those legendary album covers that you know about are the ones that they cover. But I think our friends Hypnosis are pretty...
Hypnosis, and it's a lot of the stuff that they talk about in the documentary we talked about in our Pink Floyd
Oh, yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Deep Disc Dive. Go out and listen to that one. That's a good one. And our other Deep Disc Dive is
Bowie.
Ziggy. But this is a good one. This is really, you know, I hear this era of Bowie, and I think of, you know, just the glammy type, raucous sounding, not very produced music. And it really makes me happy to listen to it.
You know, and with Bowie, it's going to sound like a slight, but it's not meant as one. I think he's really good at writing hit songs, but putting everything together on an album maybe wasn't his best forte.
Right. Maybe he should have been a single guy.
Well, I mean, you know, with Ziggy is great, the whole album.
Yeah.
But like this,
Yeah.
you know, Rebel Rebel,
Yeah.
it's an incredible hit song.
Yeah. He was on another level for sure. Yeah, I've always liked the artwork of this too. It definitely stands out. A lot of fans of glam point back to this record. So, you know, he was a big fan of Mark Bolan and T-Rex and
Oh yeah.
and you know, all of those glam dudes, and he just took it to another level.
Well, and glam was still, I mean, the New York Dolls put out their second album in 74, which I don't have. It's the first one's all I need.
Yeah, I'm guessing JJ wasn't a fan of that one either.
Yeah.
What's your
Well,
next one?
Since we're talking about Bowie, let's talk about one of Bowie's best buddies.
Okay.
Or maybe not best buddies.
I have a feeling I know who you're going to talk about. Yep.
Good old Lou Reed. And this is the Best Buy series.
I love it.
And Rock and Roll Animal. And this is a live album by Lou, released in February of 74 by RCA. And it features 5 songs, 4 of which were initially recorded by the Velvet Underground. Lou just could not let the Velvet go. I mean, the Velvet Underground, in whatever form they were, actually released something in 74 as well. But Lou was still very much tied to the Velvet
I think
Underground.
the VU release was called The Velvet Underground featuring Lou Reed or something like that, if my memory serves
And
me.
they may have come out with a live album in
Yeah.
74.
Yeah. But this is also Lou kind of you know,
In glam.
in the glam period. But he's doing Sweet Jane and Heroin on side A.
Which Heroin is like we don't have the length, but it's like well, here, 13-minute song.
Yeah.
And it's live, so it's a good version of Heroin.
Yeah.
And then White Light, White Heat.
Lady Day and Rock and Roll.
Yeah, they're only 5 songs.
Yeah. But Heroin's 13 minutes.
Yeah. And then Rock and Roll is 10 minutes. So.
Yeah. The photos on this are cool.
Yeah, it's very much glam.
Yeah. And it's sort of out of focus,
Yeah.
you know, the front and the back.
And Lou had his own version of glam.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a glam leather bondage type thing.
Yeah. Almost looks like Frankenstein right there.
Yeah.
Lewenstein.
And Lou would do the eye makeup.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, man, what an interesting time
Yeah. A very interesting time.
to be in New York City at this time. Would have been something for sure.
Because there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And it was recorded live in 73 at Howard Stein's Academy of Music in New York.
Okay. Interesting.
It was a sleeper hit because it peaked at number 26 in the UK and number 45 on the Billboard 200 in the US.
Huh.
And it stayed in the top 200 for 29 weeks.
That's crazy. I don't think of Lou Reed as being a guy that's on the top of the charts. Right?
Yeah, his live stuff, I mean, he'd put on just phenomenal live shows.
Yeah.
And they could be Lou was a little bit like the Replacements. You may get a crappy show.
Good Lou or bad Lou?
Yes.
That's a good one, man.
This was good Lou.
Good Lou. Well, I'm going to go.
What's next for you?
The next one that I had is Not Fragile by Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, from 1974.
Good old BTO.
It sounds like Bachman Turner Overdrive is driving right past our studio. Or that could just be an enormous Johnny Cash train. Anyway, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Not Fragile. This has some hits on it. Not Fragile, Rock Is My Life, and This Is My Song. Roll On Down the Highway is one of the big ones.
Oh, yeah.
You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet.
Oh, that's
That's the big one. Freewheelin', Sledgehammer, Blue Moanin', Secondhand, and Giving It All Away. But I love we've talked about this record before, I think on our Canadian show, but I love these live shots of these guys. He's got his Michigan State jersey on. They were a rock and roll force for a short time. Actually saw these guys open for Van Halen in 1986.
And they're a band I think I've seen open for somebody or at a music festival.
I bet you have.
I know I've seen Randy Bachman.
Yeah. Yeah. But the cool thing about this is it's kind of embossed, like the gears here.
Oh, yeah. You don't.
So,
it's kind of hard to see.
The whole thing is.
Yeah.
If you,
Everything's embossed.
Yeah. It's really pretty cool. I can't remember what record label this is. It's Phonogram. You don't hear about Phonogram very often. But yeah, this is, gosh, I can't remember where I got this. But released in 1974 in August. Again, the two songs that I mentioned, Roll On Down the Highway and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, were the big ones. It got both of those, or actually You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet got to number 1 on the U.S. Billboard Pop Singles chart. Also number 1 on the Canada RPM Singles chart. And Roll On Down the Highway made it to 14 in the U.S. on the Pop Singles chart. And Canada RPM Singles chart, it was number 4. And Randy Bachman has said that he thought using the word fragile as the title for a rock album as Yes had done with their 1971 album Fragile, was strange. So he thought that Bachman-Turner overdrive music could be dropped and kicked without breaking. So without intending any commentary about Yes, the band tongue-in-cheek called their next album Not Fragile. So that's where the title comes from.
Nice.
I'm not a huge BTO fan, but
I did not know it was embossed. I mean, you really can't tell.
no, in the condom it makes it more difficult. You can kind of tell when it's out of there.
Yeah, when it's out, you can definitely tell. You see the box. That's super cool.
Yeah, and it is a gatefold, so I think it's more live picture here. Yeah, and there's the BTO logo with the gear back there.
Yeah, and it's back to what we were talking about. I mean, they include all these live pictures because, hey, they were out playing shows nonstop.
There was a rock and roll band working for a living. What's your next one?
Next, well, I'm going to stay in, we talked about artists releasing 2 albums.
Yes.
Our good old buddy Lou released another album. Lou Reed's Sally Can't Dance. And this is not the standout track on this is probably Sally Can't Dance. I mean, it's there's not really anything great about this.
I don't know. I think the cover's pretty great.
Yeah, the cover's great, and it's that weird art. There you see a reflection of Lou's sunglasses.
Mm-hmm. And that must be Sally
Yeah, that's Sally.
sitting there smoking a cigarette. Maybe
Yeah.
she can't dance because she's smoking a cigarette.
Sally Can't Dance. Kill Your Sons. Sorry. Kill Your Sons was probably a song that is more known to be a Lou Reed song,
Gotcha.
but there's not really anything super big about this. And I guess aside from the song, this was the first time Lou Reed released something that didn't have a former Velvet Underground song on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So he's kind of breaking out on his own.
Yeah, he's like, okay. And this came out in September of 74, so the live album was earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And the live album did much better than this, but
Might have had something to do with the artwork.
yeah, it's not tremendously great. But believe it or not, this made it to 10th on the U.S. Billboard.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was at a time where his, people knew Lou Reed and his association with Bowie and Iggy and all
Yeah, the glam scene.
the glam scene.
And I think the live album helped drive the sales of this.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
He was able to ride the coattails of It's Only Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
Because, when you go back and you look again at top 10, this does not hit top 10 Lou Reed albums.
Yeah.
And there are some very bizarre Lou Reed albums.
Well, I mean, I've always kind of looked at him as a performance artist as well as a musician. For sure. I mean, he's operating on a few different levels.
Yeah, it's one of those things that he would do his own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess he was a Tai Chi master. Did you know that? And he wrote a book that his wife, what's her name? The one
Laurie Anderson.
Laurie Anderson. She put this book out, I think, a year or two ago, and it's about the art of Tai Chi, and he studied it the second half of his life.
Well, in a way, everybody was kung fu fighting. So why not Lou?
If everybody's doing it, Lou will do it too. That's a good one, man.
So good old Lou.
My next one is the second album that Kiss put out in 1974. This came out in October of 1974, a mere 8 months after the original album came out. Now, this is Hotter Than Hell, and this has Got to Choose, Parasite, Going Blind, Hotter Than Hell, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, All the Way, Watching You, Mainline, Coming Home in Strange Ways. This didn't make as much of a splash as the first one. Parasite, they'll play a lot. Hotter Than Hell, they'll play a lot. And Let Me Go Rock and Roll, they play a lot. I've always loved the artwork on this. It's like the Japanese, they're really playing up the kabuki and the Japanese lettering and everything on it. And then you've got the pictures of them on the back. These also scantily clad young ladies coming up to assist the rock and roll stars. These first 3 albums weren't really hits. And then, Dress to Kill came out after this. Then which had Rock and Roll All Night on it, the studio version. Then they put out Alive, which had songs from those 3 first records, and that took off. That version of Rock and Roll All Night blew up, and that's where their career took off. But they had 3, albums before they really had what could be considered a hit.
Yeah, and I guess the theme of 74 is all the rock bands were busy touring.
Yeah. I mean, they've basically toured their entire career in one way or another. There have been an album or 2 that they didn't tour in support of. I don't think they really did any touring in support of The Elder, but that was a concept album, and there were a lot of issues with the band at that time. But yeah, I've always loved just the way that this looks. It's a very cool album cover.
Do you think people who collect Japanese presses get confused with this?
Probably.
Do you think the Japanese press has everything? And
it could. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is not an original, but it's probably from the 70s. I have the new 2014 re-release of this too, which if you get a chance to get if you want Kiss those are the ones to buy. Those sound fantastic.
And they haven't been, because any of these Kiss records, if you get a used copy, most of them have been well played and well used.
Ridden hard and put away wet.
Yes.
But yeah, this is the second of their records in 1974 in 10 months.
In 10 months.
In 1974. So, yep. Hotter Than Hell. Go get it, kids. It'll piss off your parents.
All right. You want to keep the parents going?
Yes. What a great
Sweet
record. More glam.
Desolation Boulevard.
Yeah.
And this was a reprint, but it was a reprint in the 80s. And I think some of these, I was trying to think if this, I have a lot of reprint, Capitol reissue.
Okay.
Up at the top.
Yep. I just talked about this album a while back. It's a good one.
Oh, it's great.
And definitely in that glam kind of area.
Ballroom Blitz.
Yep.
Leads it off.
That's a great.
Sweet FA.
Yep. They're just a really underappreciated band. They're, between all of the glammy type artists, they kind of fly under the radar. Now, the Wayne's World movie redid Ballroom Blitz, which kind of got a little more interest stoked in Sweet. But yeah, I love the cover too.
Yeah, the cover is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And this was their 3rd album.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't have known that when I first got. I would have thought, "Oh, this is the first album by this great band."
Yeah.
But no, it was their 3rd album, and originally released in the UK in November of '74.
Okay.
And it was different from 2 noticeably different versions of the album were released by RCA in Europe and by Capitol in the US. The RCA version contains the single Turn It Down, and original recording of Fox on the Run, and the Capitol version released in the U.S. in July of 75 includes the band's 1973 hit single, Ballroom Blitz.
Yeah, if you look up in the upper corner here, it says a
Yeah,
Capitol reissue, which is interesting. I don't see that often.
And the single version, well, it's because that wasn't originally on the UK release.
Right, but what I'm saying is you very seldom,
Yeah.
even if it's a reissue, it's not printed as
And
a reissue.
maybe it's because, when was this released?
74.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think when the re-release was.
Oh,
Maybe.
yeah. It may not have it on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if mine has that Capitol reissue thing on it.
And our good old buddies at Hypnosis had something to do with this cover art.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that. No kidding. Huh.
Yeah, and that's Sunset Boulevard.
Well, they would have been, I mean, they were just all over.
Yeah,
All over
they really were.
so much in the 70s. That's really crazy.
And I guess today it's the site of the Viper Room.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From where they took that picture? Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I have to go recreate that album cover one of these days.
It was shot near the entrance of a club called Filthy McNasty's, which is now the Viper Room.
Cool. And the Viper Room is no longer.
Yeah.
Been in there once. Had a drink in there. Very small place.
Most of those legendary places are tiny.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. That's a good one. That wasn't even on my 1974 radar.
Ooh.
So we've talked about The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. This is the 6th studio album by Genesis with Peter Gabriel. And this is the last album to feature Peter on lead vocals. This peaked at number 10 on the UK albums chart and number 41 on the Billboard 200 in the US. And it's their longest album to date. I had a drum instructor when I was younger, and he was a big fan of Genesis, all of the versions of Genesis, but he talked about this album a lot, and so I eventually got it, and it's kind of stuck. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is one of the singles from the album. Carpet Crawl is another one. And
it's a double.
Yeah. Double album. And we don't need to get into the whole concept. It gets pretty deep. But during the middle of the tour for this record, Peter told the band that he'd be leaving after the tour was over with. So
I'm done.
He had his own ideas. But it's a great one. There's just all kinds of weird stuff going on. He was one of those frontmen that just wasn't afraid to try anything.
Yeah.
So I think Counting Out Time is my favorite song on here. It's kind of a straightforward like pop tune, but if you get a chance, give that a listen. And yeah, this had Peter Gabriel lead vocals and flute, Steve Hackett on acoustic and electric guitars, Mike Rutherford on bass and 12-string guitar, Tony Banks on synthesizer, and Phil Collins on drums and percussion. And then Phil came to the fore to be the singer of the band after Peter Gabriel left. And really, they were more successful
with Phil
yeah, than they were Peter. But if you get a chance, give it a listen. I mean, all of the Peter Gabriel stuff
is different.
It's very different. It is very progressive.
Yeah.
More kind of art rock. And, Peter was that kind of guy. And he's another one, much in the style of David Bowie, who just never has stayed in one place for more than an album.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison. He is very much like Bowie because it really wasn't until the 80s with So that he embraced the pop life.
Yeah, but even the songs that became hits on that album are not pop songs.
No.
I mean, they are very different.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of exploded people's minds a bit, you know, accepting what could and may not be a pop song.
Yeah.
But he's great. I got to see him inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2014. My wife took me, and it was the same year that Kiss and Cat Stevens and Peter Gabriel and Nirvana. I mean,
that's a good year.
it was a cool show to see, and that's the only time I've seen Peter. So hopefully he does an extended version of this tour that he's on. He's got a new album out,
Yeah.
and he's supporting that, but he never comes to Indy.
Yeah, and I've heard good things about that album.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the tour too. But yeah, give The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway a listen, and maybe mix it with some chemicals. What's your next one?
All right, so we're gonna.
Because it's the last one, because we had a samesies on Supertramp.
Oh, I got to turn it right side up. Well,
It is?
it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Because Stevie Wonder, the fulfillingness.
Fulfillingness's first finale.
Yes,
I can say it.
I can't.
Yeah. Stevie.
But it's strange because it's a gatefold,
Mm-hmm.
but you think the top is, well, like that's the normal
Mm-hmm.
top of an album, but the top is up here.
Huh. Oh, so the jacket,
Yeah.
the record comes out the top instead
Yeah.
of the side. Yeah, that's interesting.
And there's everything you want to know about the album on the inside. I mean, everything.
Mm.
That's,
Yeah, lyrics. And
I think Wikipedia probably just copied everything from the inside. But this was the 7th studio album from Stevie Wonder,
Nice.
and it was on Tamla, which is a Motown subsidiary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
There's really no huge hits on this.
well, not really, but it's the 4th of 5 albums that are considered Wonder's classic period.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Boogie on Reggae Woman, that's one.
You Haven't Done Nothing.
Yeah, that's a good one. It Ain't No Use. He's just on another level, man.
Yeah, they're not household tunes.
Yeah,
But
so it's kind of a gatefold in this way,
yeah,
where this is him currently
When he started,
and then
little
him
Stevie.
younger here. I know that's hard to see. Sorry, Jacob. But yeah, very cool. I mean, again, just on another level as a musician. I mean, he played most of the instruments on these recordings himself. He's just this was a very fertile time for Stevie. Funk and disco and all of that stuff was really bubbling up in the mid 70s.
Yeah.
So he kind of came along at just the right time, for sure.
and there's a lot of social commentary involved in this album, but
Yeah, I mean, the civil rights movement was, still kind of slowly moving along at this time, and these pop stars who started as 10-year-old kids are growing into adults now and choosing, to support social issues in their art, and that's not always embraced by the greater buying public.
And You Haven't Done Nothing was a #1 Billboard hit.
Was it?
Yeah.
Huh. I did not know that. I did not know that. That's my Johnny Carson for you. That's a good one. I've always loved the artwork on these albums that are considered his classics.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's very cool. And, obviously it's upside down.
Yeah, that I struggle with figuring out how to
Some
put
of
this
those gatefolds do open that
Yeah.
way. It's just it's just very strange.
Yeah, it's a strange art design to
Yeah.
have. You know, the top is where the albums come out.
Yeah. Yeah. But it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Really, I've always kind of wondered why albums don't go down into the jacket as opposed to go in the side. You know what I mean? You're holding it right side up. I mean, it's more likely to fall out from the side, but I don't know. Maybe Stevie knows something that we don't.
He surely does.
I bet. And he's probably got access to chemicals that are really good.
Yeah, man. That's my reggae woman.
But it sounded like a reggae woman, John.
Yeah, man.
That's a good one. That's our last one, right?
Yes.
Because we both brought Supertramp, Crime of the Century. But it's always fun to look back on these 50-year shows. And this is really the first one that I struggled to find
Me too.
stuff in. And I almost asked you to bring extra records because I might have needed one. There are ebbs and flows to popular music. There are high points and low points and everything in between. And when you really think about it, we've done these. I think this is our third.
Our
Maybe-
fourth one.
Our fourth.
Because we did 70.
Okay. So we've done 4 of these, and there's inevitably going to be one that's kind of less of a standout. But I will tell you this, moving forward through the middle 70s and into the 80s, there are going to be a lot of great records to talk about.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's always fun to like dig in and learn more about your collection. And I just never would have, I mean, when I first started researching 1974 records, I'm just sitting there putting off looking for the records because I think I have a bunch of them, and I didn't.
Yeah.
So
I was the same way. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, there'll be a bunch. in
yeah,
there.
and it points out the holes that we have in
Yeah.
our collection, and I just can't believe I don't have Apostrophe. But like I said, every time I find it used at a record show, it is torn to shit. Like every time, without fail. So I'm not going to buy a record in bad shape just to have the record.
Yeah, I did that early on, but it's one that you know you're going to have to replace.
Right. So you're basically throwing your money away. And
Yeah.
the way we've talked, I mean, I do love going to record shows and getting used records. Certain records I'm okay buying used,
Yeah.
but like we've said, the reissues, I'm a firm believer in a lot of the reissues because, they're taken care of, they're not abused. Occasionally you'll get one with a warp or a scratch on it, but
Yeah.
not that often. So, but we want you guys to go to our freshly minted YouTube channel and check out all of the video snacks that we've been throwing up there. We have the JJ French show, which caused quite a stir. We are opening different records, different boxed sets, just to let you guys know what's in there. We're doing shorts. We're telling you little known tidbits about certain bands or albums or songs. So if you guys have any other ideas for that YouTube channel, please get on our social media and share them with us because the interaction is the best part.
Yeah.
With these shorts, they've been getting a lot of views and there are a lot of opinions expressed. And it's amazing how just some small opinion can spark a conversation. And that's what we want to do. We want to have a conversation with you guys. We also want show ideas from you. I mean, we keep this is our 61st or 60th episode. Don't quote me on that, Jacob. And it's not easy to continually talk about different things without a little help from you guys. So if you have any ideas on show ideas, please share those with us too. And we just want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching and coming along with us on this journey because it's really been a trip.
It has.
It's been a lot of fun. We have our team here with Jacob Hansen and Keith Toombs has really kind of kicked this Vinyl Ventures thing into a whole new gear that we never knew existed. And we want to make sure we thank them too, because we wouldn't be doing this on the level that we are
No.
without their help. So we want to thank Jacob, we want to thank Keith, and we want to thank all of you guys for coming along on this journey with us. And we'll see you all the next time around.
It's a